Hey guys, okay, this is just a quick whistle-stop tour of InDesign. We're using Creative Cloud 2017, and I'm just going to take you through the sketchbook that I've made for uh, my modules. This is a free template you're welcome to use. You can also hack and modify it however you please. Uh, I'm going to start off by just going over the interface. As you can see, I'm in InDesign here. We have menus along the top. Now, obviously, I'm on a Mac, but this is one of those pieces of software that functions identically whether you're on Mac or PC. The next bar here is sort of InDesign bar. It has links to Bridge and other things. Different views, whether you want rulers, other things like that. It's also probably worth noticing that I am set at the moment. I have reset mine to Essentials. Now, I normally have my own customized interface with some additional palettes, and it depends what you're doing. These are preset templates, and you can also save your own, but obviously just because it's likely to be what will fire up in the labs, I'm using Essentials. If you see things on your version that don't match up here, feel free to go up the top here and just reset to Essentials, and you should have the same layout that I've got. Also, if you're new to Creative Cloud 2017 but you have used InDesign before, you'll notice a few different tools and icons, etc. Easiest way to get an update on these is to either go to lynda.com through the University Library, log in through that first, then log into lynda.com. If you haven't used it before, create an account. And there is two tutorials there that I'd recommend. One is an essential training for InDesign 2017. And the other is what's new in Creative Cloud 2017, specifically obviously the InDesign file. So again, just returning to the interface, this area here is the contextual menu, which basically when I select things, you can see things like their coordinates, their scale, their angle, etc. And there are even options over on the right here for how you sort of fit content and that. Now I am on a smaller screen resolution here than you'll probably be on, and you will find that there'll be a number of additional buttons over the top here, which I can't currently see because I'm obviously recording this at 720. So down the left we have tools. The main ones we're going to be using are potentially the rectangle frame tool, which is used to put in frames into which you can place content, whether that be text or whether it be images. Type tool, again, you could just drag out type. You can use the line tool, pen tool, etc. you might well be familiar with. We're also going to be using the two different arrow tools at the top. They're quite important. If you want to, you can use the hand tool to move the window around, or you can hold down space and it just allows you to move it around freely. And you can use the magnifier, although I tend to use the shortcut, either command or control and plus to zoom in, and minus, control minus to zoom out. Okay, so just take you through again, not so much the interface. Down the right here we have the standard palettes from the Essentials view. Most important ones really for what we're going to be dealing with are the Pages palette. It is important to note, obviously with me being at a low resolution here, that there are master pages above the top, but some of my master pages are hidden from view. So you can see that I have an A master, which is front cover in this template, a B1 master, which is a style of section header. We can double click to have a look at any of these. So this one has a white background box and area to put content in. A B2 master section header, which is an alternative. Instead of white box, it just uses lines. A pure blank page, and a rear cover as well. Okay, so you may have a slightly different module, clearly because obviously when I'm creating this, I'll create different versions for each of the modules. So we're pretty much about ready to go. The only other thing I'll show you quickly is the layers palette. When we're looking at these, you'll see that I've created it on a number of layers. Layers work very much like Illustrator, similar to Photoshop, but you can burrow down into these a little bit more usually and create sublayers, etc. Background layer at the moment has a grey fill, just that if you're looking at it on screen, full screen, it doesn't create too much screen glare, and it doesn't distract from sketchbook content, particularly when you're in the white pages section. You can unlock any of these layers and edit that color if you so desire. You can even hide the background if you don't want it. There is a drop shadow dynamically being applied to whatever you put in the background layer. So if you wanted to, you could put a wooden table texture in there or something like that. I've also then got the sketchbook itself. Now you can see I've got this sort of mild texture on the cover, and as I hide it, it gets rid of that and it goes completely flat. Again, if you didn't like that texture, you could replace it with one of your own. If you wanted a linen cover, for example, you could edit it in Photoshop or what have you. Okay, all of the files can be edited from the links palette, or you can hide the other layers, right click and go to edit. I then am colouring the cover dynamically, so you'll see that the colour is actually black and white, and I'm then applying this red coloration treatment to it. The other thing to note is under the swatches palette, you will see that there is a colour called cover colour. So if you do decide you don't want the colour that's on here, you can change it in one place and your whole sketchbook will be recoloured accordingly. Okay, along with any text that uses that coloration. So that's where to go. I'm just going to hit cancel. So this is what we call object-oriented workflow. So in other words, the cover color is an object. It has a property, set color properties, and everywhere it's being used in all the style sheets and things, which I'll come to later, it's being applied. And if I change the object, then all of the children, if you like, all of the things which inherit its values are going to change as well. So it's sort of working smartly with styles effectively, so that I can very quickly later on decide, should my project that I work on have a different color or develop in its own brand, I can brand my sketchbook quickly. So on top of that, I have a page layer. Now on this particular page, you won't see any change because there isn't a page, but obviously when you're normally in the areas which have white pages, you'll see a significant change if you turn this on and off. Just scroll back up. So there is actually a paper texture in that. Again, you could clear that out and make it just white. I then have an artwork layer. So on the cover here, you'll notice when I hover over things that they have this blue outline, which means they belong on this blue layer. So I have basically two artwork layers for you to work on. You can place artwork here, and it will appear below these wire bindings and holes. So if you wanted it to look like I had bound, for example, a postcard onto the cover, I'd place it on this layer. If I wanted it to sit over the top of the wire, I'd place it on this layer. Okay, so it doesn't really matter if you wanted to move something, you can simply grab the little chip, drag it to the other layer, and you'll see it will move. I'm just going to undo. Okay, I'll have to move each of the elements across, including this background beam, otherwise you can see it's going to go behind it. There is the wire and holes. So again, if you didn't want a wire bound sketchbook, you want something that looked more like a hard bound sketchbook, feel free to edit the template, hide it, change, edit the page or cover area graphic in Photoshop to make it fill the page more, or whatever you want. So just put the wire and holes back. We then have another artwork layer that in this case has all of my artwork on the cover on it. Finally, we have a sticky notes layer. I've put some sticky notes just to sort of prompt you. Particularly later on, it has some useful tips. So you can hide this in one place by just turning it off. You don't need to delete the sticky notes. And then if you can't remember what the shortcut was to release something from a master page, it'll still be there. So just probably hide the layer or lock the layer and hide it. Okay. And finally, there's a comments layer, which I use personally if with a Wacom tablet or something like that, and the pencil tool, and I can just handwrite comments on. It is worth noting that if you want to do that, you probably, let me just move to a page which has some, so say I wanted to draw around one of these images, you probably want to double click and take off the edit selected paths or keep selected. Normally with those selected, if I draw and if I try to print some letters like this, it's going to be a bit tricky with the mouse. And you can see at the moment that this is putting a fill, not a stroke. Just undo that and do it again, change it around, just give a little arrow here to flip. So if I wanted to write on here, a bit difficult, as I say, with a mouse, comments, or draw an arrow, I can do, okay? And then these elements can be edited, all right? You can also change all the properties, so I don't have to use the cover color, but anything I wanted to do, like to highlight like that, I can draw it. I can then, that object can be selected. I can change its property, so I could thicken it, change the stroke effect however I wanted. You can go into stroke for a lot more options. I can round off the ends, and you could even choose sort of textures and things like that. I'm not going to bother at the moment. And I can also select the color, go to my swatches, and maybe we make it pink. So I use this a lot for commenting, and it's just easier if I keep all the comments on one layer so I could show or hide them, and also just helps me manage things, and normally I want them to work on top. You can also change the opacity of it. At the moment you can see this is opaque as it goes over things. So if you go up to your window menu, down to effects, if you're used to Photoshop and layer effects in Photoshop, they don't do it in the layer level here, they do it under the effects palette on InDesign. But I can change to things like multiply, which will make it look like I've drawn actually over the photo rather than with an opaque marker. Okay, so dead easy to do. Anything like that you're going to use again, maybe just dock it by dragging it to the side. So that's the layers, the pages. You can see in the document I've got master pages at the top, and then these have been applied to these pages. If you look on each of the page thumbnails, it tells you which master. So obviously my front cover has the front cover master applied. The next one has the B1 master, which is the original section heading applied, etc., etc. And you can literally, anytime you need, just drag in a page fresh into your document like so. So that's a quick overview of the basic interface and at some level a template. We're now going to cut to another video, and I'm going to show you how you edit, how you work with this template.